It's a frustrating reality, isn't it? We've probably all been there.
Oh,
Chasing a lead, putting in all this time, all this energy, only to find out, well, they weren't really a prospect to begin with.
hmm. And the data backs that feeling up. Something like, what, 67% of sales lost just because of poor qualification? That's huge.
It really is. Imagine getting even some of that effort, that potential revenue, back.
Exactly. And that's really where having a strategy comes in. A sales qualification framework.
Right. Think of it like a compass, maybe, helping you find the actual customers among all the potentials out there.
That's a good way to put it.
The article we looked at defines it pretty clearly. A set of predefined criteria that help your sales reps qualify and disqualify prospects early on. Sounds simple, but wow, the impact on efficiency.
Oh, absolutely huge. Get the right framework and you'll see, well, sales team productivity should go up because they're not chasing ghosts,
Makes sense. They save time, save energy.
which means cost savings and hopefully, better conversion rates. The big
So that's our mission for this deep dive, really, to unpack 6 of these key frameworks.
give you a shortcut, maybe.
Yeah, a shortcut to figuring out which ones might work best for you, depending on your situation, and help avoid that, that massive 67% problem.
Sounds good. Where should we start?
Okay, let's dive in. How about we start with one that's pretty well established?
Sure. Let's kick off with BANT.
BANT. Right. It's kind of a classic in sales, isn't it? Goes way back to the 50s, IBM, I think.
That's the one. Foundational stuff. And BANT, it's an acronym, of course, stands for Budget, Authority, Need, and Timeline.
Okay, budget. First one up. Pretty straightforward, I guess. Do they actually have the money?
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
Can they afford what you're selling? The article calls it a primary filter, which makes sense.
Then A for authority.
Right. Is the person you're talking to the one who can actually say yes to the deal?
Yeah, no point pitching the perfect solution to someone who can't, sign the check.
Exactly. Then comes N, need.
Need. So what's their problem? What pain point does your product or service actually solve for them?
Mm-hmm. Got to understand their challenges to show how you fit.
And finally, T, timeline.
Timeline. How soon do they need this? Is it urgent or is it a maybe next year kind of thing?
Okay, BANT. Budget, authority, need, timeline. So what are the good points, the pros?
Well, the article mentions it saves time up front in qualification. You're hitting the big potential roadblocks early.
Okay.
It also tends to lead to a shorter sales cycle, supposedly, and it's generally seen as, flexible, reliable.
But there's always a but, isn't there? What are the downsides?
The big one seems to be that it can feel very seller-focused.
Ah, how so?
While jumping straight into budget questions, for instance, can sometimes, put people off. Feels a bit aggressive, maybe.
I can see that, like, show me the money before you've even really connected. Could definitely scare someone off, especially if they're still figuring out their own needs.
Exactly. It might feel premature.
Yeah.
And apparently, it's not always the absolute fastest framework to actually implement across a team.
That potential to alienate someone early, that's a worry.
It is. And I think that's why you see other frameworks emerge, maybe trying to be a bit more customer-centric. Which leads us nicely to the next one, actually, ANUM.
ANUM. Okay. Developed by Ken Krogh, you said. And this one flips things around a bit, more customer focused.
Yeah, that's the idea. The acronym is authority, need, urgency, and money. See the difference?
Oh, yeah. Authority is first now, and money is last. Interesting shift.
Right. The thinking is, let's first make sure we're talking to the decision maker. Saves time right away if you are.
Okay, so authority first, then need again. What's their problem?
Mm-hmm. Then urgency, which is like timeline and BANT. How quickly do they need a fix?
And finally, money. Budget range. So it still covers the same ground as BANT, just
Right.
shuffled.
Pretty much. But the emphasis changes. The pros listed are, again, saving time by targeting the decision maker directly. And it helps clarify, which leads are really worth pursuing further.
But what's the catch with ANU?
The potential issue is if you focus too hard on only talking to the final decision maker.
Uh-huh.
You might disqualify a lead too early because you dismiss someone who isn't the authority but could be a key influencer, a gatekeeper maybe, or someone who could champion your cause internally.
Ah, right. That internal champion can be crucial, can't they? They might not sign the PO, but they can persuade the person who does. You risk missing that whole angle.
Precisely. Sometimes those gatekeepers actually hold a lot of sway or have the best understanding of the real need. So that leads us to maybe needing something even more in-depth.
Okay, something more complex.
Yeah, let's look at MEDDIC.
MEDDIC. Okay, this one's from the 90s. Napoli and Dunkel. Sounds like it digs deeper.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's designed for a much more thorough understanding. The letters stand for metrics, economic buyer, decision criteria, decision process, identify pain, and champion.
Whoa, okay. That's a mouthful. Let's break that down. Metrics.
Metrics is about the quantifiable results, the measurable value your solution brings. Think ROI, efficiency gains, hard numbers.
Okay, makes sense. Economic buyer, is that just the authority person again?
Sort of, but it's deeper. Yes, it's the person with the ultimate budget control, but MEDDIC pushes you to understand their personal motivations, their business drivers, what makes them tick.
Ah, okay. Not just their title, but what influences them. Got it. Decision criteria.
This is about the specific factors they'll use to judge solutions, what are their must-haves, what technical specs matter, what are the nice-to-haves.
Right. And decision process.
That's mapping out their internal buying journey. Who needs to approve what? Is there a committee? What are the steps, the timeline for the process itself?
Okay, detailed. Identify pain, that seems familiar.
Yeah, similar to need in the others, but maybe with more emphasis on really digging into the consequences of that pain. What happens if they don't fix it?
And the last one, champion. That sounds interesting.
It is. This is actively identifying someone inside the prospect's company who believes in your solution and is willing to advocate for it internally. Your inside ally.
Like your secret agent on the inside?
Kind of. They can give you insights, help navigate politics, really push for you.
So, MEDDIC sounds incredibly thorough. The pros must be pretty good.
The article says it leads to really accurate qualification. Less wasted effort, fewer deals falling apart late in the game, higher close rates, basically.
But the downside must be the effort involved, right?
Exactly. It's a much longer qualification process. You need systems to track all that data. It requires significant time and resources.
Yeah, I can see how that might be tough for, say, a smaller team or a faster-moving sales environment. That level of detail could really slow things down, couldn't it?
It absolutely could. It's a trade-off between thoroughness and speed. But perhaps you could adapt it, maybe phase in the elements. Start with pain and champion, then dig deeper.
Maybe. Okay, so if MEDDIC is deep and detailed, what about something maybe simpler?
Well, let's look at CHAMP. This one's often described as customer-centric, similar in spirit to ANUM maybe, but with a different starting point.
CHAMP EP. Okay, what's the acronym?
Challenges, authority, money, and prioritization.
Challenges first this time.
Yes,
Interesting.
the idea is start by deeply understanding their problems, their challenges right up front. Position yourself as the solution to those specific things.
Okay. Then authority decision maker check. Money budget check. And prioritization. How does that differ from timeline or urgency?
It's a bit more strategic, maybe. It's about understanding how important solving this particular challenge is compared to everything else on their plate. Is it a top priority or just something they'd like to fix eventually?
Ah, okay. So where does it fit in their overall business strategy?
Exactly. So the pros. You get a good handle on their needs early by focusing on challenges. And it can make disqualification easier if their challenges just aren't what you solve.
The cons.
The article suggests it might delay the sales cycle if you spend too long just on challenges without getting to things like budget or authority quickly enough.
Right.
And it also seems to lack specific focus on the decision criteria and decision process that MEDDIC highlighted.
Which could lead to surprises later on, maybe? You understand their pain, but not how they'll actually choose a vendor.
That's the potential risk, yeah. You might connect on the problem, but stumble on the how we buy part. Okay, next up is FAINT.
FAINT, developed by Mike Schultz. This one sounds different again. It emphasizes the lead's interest and unplanned purchases.
Correct. It's got a unique angle. The acronym is funds, authority, interest, need, and timing.
Interest, that's new. How does that fit in?
Well, it starts with funds, can they pay? Then authority, can they decide? But then interest is about actively generating interest in your solution, especially if they weren't already looking.
Ah, so it's more proactive in creating demand.
Seems that way. Then it circles back to need, what's the underlying problem it solves, and timing, when might they act?
So the strategy is like grab their attention, show them something cool or valuable they maybe didn't know they needed, and then connect it to a need.
That seems to be the core idea, especially for those unplanned buys. The pros listed are faster conversions, potentially, and better use of resources because you're focusing on those showing genuine engagement.
But I can see the potential pitfall here. What if you create interest, but the product doesn't really solve a core problem for them? Just generating buzz isn't enough, is it?
Probably not long-term, no. And the other risk mentioned is potentially losing leads who are a great fit in terms of need, but just don't have the immediate funds ready for something unplanned. Seems like a bit of a gamble sometimes.
Yeah, you might filter out perfectly good future customers just because the timing or immediate budget wasn't there when you first sparked their interest.
Definitely a consideration. Okay, one more framework to cover. This one's a bit of a beast. GPCTBA, C&I.
Whoa, okay. GPCTBA CNI. That's quite something. B2B focus, you said. Assumes some familiarity.
Yeah, it's positioned as aligning your goals with the lead's bigger picture goals, assuming they already have some idea of what you do. It's very comprehensive.
Let's try and unpack it. GPCTBA
Okay, deep breath. Goals.
Yeah.
What are their overall business objectives?
Hmm.
Plans. How are they trying to achieve those goals right now? Challenges.
Hmm.
What's getting in their way?
Okay. Goals, plans, challenges. That makes sense. Then TBA, timeline, budget, authority.
Yep, the familiar ones. Timeline for a solution, budget available, authority to purchase.
But then there's CNI, negative consequences and implications. That sounds different.
It is. Negative consequences is about exploring the downside for them if they don't act. What's the cost of inaction? What problems get worse?
That's powerful, making them articulate the risk of doing nothing and implications.
That's looking at the broader positive impact if they do implement your solution. How does it affect other parts of their business? What are the ripple effects?
Wow. Okay, this one really requires you to understand their whole business, doesn't it? Their strategy, their processes.
Absolutely. The article stresses that. The big pro is that if you do this right, you're focusing only on leads with a very, very high chance of closing and becoming valuable customers.
And the con, I'm guessing, is time and effort again.
You guess it. It's potentially the most lengthy and time-consuming qualification process of them all. Requires a serious investment to do properly.
So we've got BANT, ANUM, MEDDIC, CHAMP, FAINT, and the mammoth GPCT BACNI. 6 different ways to slice it.
Quite a range.
Now, the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
How do you choose? Which one is right for you?
Well, thankfully, the article gave us that handy table summarizing the best fits.
Right. Let's quickly recap that. BANT seems best for specific budgets, high-value deals like software or IT.
Yep. ANUM is suggested for those complex, maybe slow decision-making processes you find in big companies across industries.
MEDDIC shines with long sales cycles, maybe new software launches, so SaaS and online businesses often like it.
Makes sense. CHAMP is good if you're really focused on long-term understanding of your audience, so startups and SaaS trying to nail their product market fit might use it.
Paint is geared towards leads with cash, potentially making unplanned buys, think e-commerce or maybe other online impulse-driven sectors.
And finally, the big one, GPCTBA CNI, is for when you have the time to really, really understand needs and goals. So startups, SMBs, potentially any industry if you have the resources for that deep dive.
So the bottom line is, it depends.
Pretty much. There's no single best answer. You really need to look at your own business, your sales process, who your ideal customers are, and what you're trying to achieve.
It's about matching the framework to your reality.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's our run-through of 6 key sales qualification frameworks. Hopefully this gives you a much clearer picture of how structuring your qualification process can, stop you wasting time and help you focus on the leads that really count.
They really provide that structure, don't they? A way to systematically figure out who's worth your valuable time.
Absolutely. So as you're listening, maybe think about which of these frameworks or even elements from different ones resonates most with your current sales challenges and goals.
Yeah, what feels like it would make the biggest difference for your team right now. That's a good starting point.
And one final thought, maybe building on this, the article briefly mentioned lead scoring software as something that can work with these frameworks.
And CRMs for managing it all.
Right. So perhaps exploring how technology like lead scoring or a good CRM system can help you implement and manage whichever framework you choose. That could be a really valuable next step in optimizing everything.
Definitely. Using tech to support the process could make even the more complex frameworks much more manageable. Lots to think about.